Kellyscards.ca, and welcome to this Make a Card video. So today I'm going to do a couple different cards. They're all going to be similar. I have some of them semi-prepped, and I actually have one that I've completed that I will kind of show you here in a second. But I really like to use like vintage papers for mail cards. So what I've done is I've put together these cards that I'm going to make with these car images. I just finished this one. I'll just kind of show you this one here. It's kind of an olivey green mixed with browns on the image, and then I've got these wonderful die cuts on here, and really like how that adds to the card. So to get started, I'm going to start with this card here. It is the least prep. So one of the first things that I do is I will use some of the vintage photo distress ink. Now I can also use, say, the walnut stain, or I've even used black soot. And what I'll do is I will just ink up the edges. Now this just adds a nice coat of ink around that edge, and you can just see that color difference on the edge, and I think it just looks really nice. Now as you can see, this paper, I've picked out two papers, and what I did was I just sewed a little bit of a strip down this one, and you can see the stitching on there. And I really like how that looks. There's already so much more decoration on this piece than if I just was simply layering it, just because of the sewing. So now this is going to come on here like that, and I'm going to prep the image. And again, I really want to ink this image up, go right into the corners and just lightly ink it. And that's just going to kind of blend it in with the rest of the card, because we've inked around the edges of the rest of the card. And it will also get rid of the white edges on the edge there, and it just looks a little bit better. So now that I've got that, I've cut out my image already. I've even cut a mat to fit, and I really like doing mats, because if I just simply put this down onto the card, I mean, it's okay, but I really like how it pops out with the black. And by doing this, now I can bring in black accents to really make it look good. So I'm first going to put this piece down, and I'm going to bring in some score tape now. So now I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to just position this here. And now because of those sewing lines, I like to put the top down, and then I just like to make sure they're tucked under. And once it's on there, I can bring in my bone folder just to make sure that that's on there. And I think that looks pretty good. Now that our base is on, we can start working up to some of the elements. And I'm just going to take this car image now, and I'm going to put it on that black mat. I think the less we have to move around while trying to figure out a good layout for the card, the better. So I like to always layer up my images pretty quick on building the cards. So I'm just going to make sure that's on there nice and straight, and then I'll use my bone folder just to make sure it's on there. Now I had a couple die cuts. I had a couple of these stars kind of picked out. I also had a Spellbinders die. This one I've had this set forever, these motif sets, and really love this. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this on this card. I kind of like this one. This one says happy birthday, but I was thinking of just covering the birth and having the car sit upon the die cut there, and then adding a couple other elements, playing around with the star theme, and maybe bringing in a couple stars like that. And then I've got my sentiments. So I've got this one picked out here that says celebrate. And I like to make my own images in MS Word and Photoshop, and then I'll print them out. So this is just kind of an example. So I've cut out this celebrate from that. And what I'm going to do, you have a couple different options on these type of black label sentiments. You can either use a marker and go around. I don't know if you can see that white edge there. I don't like that white edge, so I am going to just ink it, and now you can see it's black, and this is just going to help settle this into this card a little bit nicer. And it's not that I'm, adding too much ink around the edge. I'm simply just adding it along here so that we don't see that white portion. So now that that's done, I can start playing around with where I want things. Like I say, I do like the stars with this star here, and I think this is a good balance. You don't want to have the card too busy. I find sometimes we put way too much on the card and I don't know, it doesn't quite look balanced, but I think right now this looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere this together. So for the die cuts, I'm going to use some of this multi-matte medium. Really love this glue, really works great. And I like it because it dries mostly matte in like a matte finish. So it's not going to be that shine that you see from most other adhesives. And we'll just finally get the adhesive coming out of the bottle here. I'm just going to bring in an extra spare sheet because I'm going to be going and dabbing, and in case I miss, I don't want to get my work surface kind of full of adhesive. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around this word happy. Now this birth is going to be covered up, so I know I don't have to adhere that, and I'm just going to do a quick extra dab there so that all the extra adhesive is kind of off of this and it won't kind of as much bubble through when I place this down. So I'm just going to move this sentiment and I'm going to just kind of tuck this under to where I want it. And again, I want it kind of mostly sticking out so you can definitely see the happy and the start of the star. And I just want it over a little bit more, and I think that looks good. Now I'm going to pull this out of the way and just give this a gentle press. And one of the things I like doing now is just putting an acrylic block and twisting it, because this is all flat pressure now, and this is going to help adhere this nice to this card. And that's why I don't want to have too much of that adhesive coming out of the top, or my block would be all sticky and I'd mess up my card. I'm going to bring in the car now, and I've already made a little foam mat, and that's just going to raise this up a little bit just to give it a little bit of lift off the card. You can use pop dots for something like this. I find this Play Craft foam here that you can find at Michael's pretty much perfect for this type of thing, though. It's not really expensive. The only thing is you have to adhere obviously both sides where the pop dots are kind of ready to go. But I do like that it gives consistent coverage throughout the image. So if I had to put a few pop dots on here, I'd have to put a lot to cover this big surface. And by using this foam, it's going to be a nice even surface for any pressure that might be put on it. So I'm not going to push this down yet. I'm just going to bring in my other stars and make sure I like where everything is before I actually put this down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my star down first here, because I think what I want to do is I just want to tuck it under the image like this, and I'm going to do that as well to the small one. And I'm just going to use my tape runner there. I'm going to tuck this under here now. And now I'm going to put this down. I'm just going to make sure this is nice and straight. So that's going to be on there. And then one of the things that I want to do is I was thinking of putting this Celebrate on here as well. I could put it in this corner, or I could just leave it off. I think it kind of needs some type of sentiment. So I am going to just put this on, and I'm going to lay it nice and flat into that corner. And then this card could really be given for a lot of different reasons now. I'm not putting Happy Birthday on here. I'm not putting Happy Father's Day. It's kind of like this could be open to whatever. And I'm just going to take a peek. I like to add the bling onto the corners. Sometimes I find it just finishes up the card. I think I'm going to put it in this corner so that the pattern and the busyness kind of goes like in this diagonal here. We're going to have more empty space on these other corners, and I really like how that looks. So this is going to complete this first card here, and now I'm going to go on to the other cards I have ready. For this one here, I've already done something very similar. So I've already inked the edges. I've sewn this, basically this last little strip I had of this paper onto this one. It looks really good, I think. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just make sure all my sewing lines are stretched out so I can adhere them down here at the back. And I'm going to bring in my score tape. I can pull the backings off, and this card will come together a lot faster than the last one because I have a lot of the pieces already done. And I just wanted to do that so that when I did the video, it would go just a little bit quicker, that I could get a couple more cards in here and kind of explaining really how I laid it out together. So for this one, it has this kind of olivey color. This, I can't remember what paper line this is because I prep a lot of my card mats, and this one was one that was already prepped, but I kind of grabbed this and this because I knew it would go with this image. You can kind of see that's that same color tone exactly to this paper. And if yours doesn't match and you can Photoshop, you can even Photoshop an image like this and get the exact color you want. So again, I've made a foam mat, so I'm just going to piece this one together. And I'm just going to make sure that it's on there and that none's sticking out. And that's ready to go on. Now I've got one of these. This is a little kind of doily type things. Now this is from My Favorite Things. This is their Mini Delicates doily set. And I just kind of got this set. I really like these. I wasn't sure if I was going to get them because of how small they are, but I'm actually glad I did, because for instances like this, obviously a doily is not like masculine, but we can use this as an accent underneath this car and then add something on top, and we're still going to get a little bit of decoration, but it's not going to be like girly. So really like that. And then I've also picked up this sentiment here that I've made, and it says to a classic. So again, this is kind of leaving this card basically open to whatever is needed at the time. And to do this, I'm going to bring in this scrap piece of paper again, and I'm just going to get this adhesive on the back here. You can use the stick-it tape, and I've talked about that in my other videos, the stick-it tape that you basically die cut and then your die cut becomes a sticker. Really like that, but in this case I've already die cut this, so I think I'll just use it now. And my idea is that it's going to be tucked under here. So the car is going to be like this, and we're going to have the sentiment about there. So I think this little doily can come in right about here. And I'm just going to give it a little push. I got a little bit more glue that's going to be underneath the car, so I don't want to wiggle it too much. And I'm just going to push down here to make sure it is on there good before I bring in my acrylic block. And I'm just going to give it a couple twists here so that that pressure is nice and even. So now when I bring in my car, and I really like this key. I buy a lot of my printable images off of Etsy. There's a lot of amazing designers, and you should check it out. Just search like printables on Etsy. A lot of Etsy designers basically make a ton of things, like vintage stuff, baby stuff, like you name it. So I did pick that set up, and I have printed it and I have punched it, and I'm going to use it with this card. So I think I really like how this looks. It's very simple, it's not too busy, and I'm going to start putting this one together now. So I'm just going to add this adhesive here on the back of this foam, and I'm going to get this positioned again perfectly before I actually kind of press it in. Okay, that looks good there, and I'm just going to make sure it's nice and straight. Just like the other one, I'm going to take a little bit of black soot here on the edge of this sentiment, just to ensure that there's no white edges. Now when this comes over here, I'm going to have it laying pretty much halfway on the car like this. And what I've done is I've made a little bit of foam here that's going to match the same height that the car is currently at. And I'm just going to put this along the bottom. And I'll show you how I'm going to do. And see, now when this piece comes in like this, it can snug right up to the car, and it's all the same height. And now I just have to bring in my adhesive and hold it down here. And I'm going to get this put into place. And I just have to kind of decide how close I want it to that key. Now for this key, I have kind of a similar problem because I've got this edge here. What I can do is I can bring in a piece of foam and I can just trace around it. And again, I'm going to make it smaller. I'm just going to kind of do like a cut behind where I'm not quite doing the same size. I'm just cutting behind. And this is that same foam, so it's all going to be the same height. And now that I've got that piece done, I know that I'm going to need basically a corner out of there. So now all I'm going to have to do is literally cut to the middle and cut straight up. And now this is going to be able to sit right into here, and then this piece is going to go over top. Now you may need to cut it a little bit shorter because right now, see, it's too low. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this right here so it'll be able to sink a little bit more onto the card and we won't have it as low. And now that's going to stick on there, and this will go over top, and that looks perfect. So I'm going to put this piece down first, this little foam piece, and I'm going to tuck it into that little corner, we shall say, and then now I can put adhesive over this whole circle piece. And there we go. I love the foam for that because now this is all the same height, but you can definitely see the dimension there and the raised. I think it looks really good and adds a little bit more interest. I think I'm going to add the 3 bling here onto one of the corners. That might be nice. And I do like that. So that will finish up that card. And for the last card, again, very, very similar. This card has this more intricate die cut. I've got the same sentiment, another key, and I've got this great image, which I've already, again, distressed, and I've put up on this mat. I'm just going to add the foam now. For this die cut, we're going to do very similar again. I really do recommend stick-it tape for this type of an intricate die cut, but I've got this multi-matte medium in this type of container, and it's like kind of like the glue lid, and I like this. I try to get all the excess off, and then I'm able to put this on a little bit more faster than the smaller bottles. This one I'm definitely going to dab off. Now that I've got my glue on there, I can pull that aside, and it's definitely going to be really important to kind of dab off that any extra so we don't have any oozing out. And I'm going to bring this one right into the corner here. Okay, now I've got that on there, and I really want to push this down. I'm going to bring in that acrylic block now and just push quite hard on this. Now that this is on here, I can get this whole piece put onto the card base. Now this is going to come in, and I really like these tones together. The reddy brown and the beige. And again, with the black card base, you can get away with these black accents, and I think they just help make the card pop a little bit. And I can bring my image in and my sentiment and this little key. We're going to do something very similar to the last card. I just have to decide where I want my sentiment. Do I want it on this side or do I want it on this side? I think I'd like it like this, so that the sentiment will pull off, because there's not as much black here as over here, and it'll kind of stick out better. I'm just going to get some adhesive now onto this image, and I'm going to bring it in here, and again, just moving things around to make sure I like it where it is before I push it down. And I'm just going to put that down. And now I'm going to do exactly what I did here with the sentiment. So a quick run around with the black soot around those edges to make sure they're not white. And that will be able to basically nestle in there. And now we have this. Because of all the black accents, I'm just going to run this black soot around the edge of this key. And it's just going to help it pop out because there's so much brown and light brown, similar colors, and I really want to help it pop out, so that's why I did that inking. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the circle. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to cut a piece of foam that is going to be very similar to the circle we did in the last card. And there, that is a really good placement for that. And again, this is all even because it's the same foam and it's the same height. So just to finish off this card, I think it really needs the bling here in this other corner because it is fairly empty, and it's, you know, these aren't shiny bling, so they're not girly. They're just basically a nice little accent to kind of help balance up the card. So I hope you enjoyed this make a card video with these cards. I like to move things around, and I really like to look at different papers for placement. There's so many beautiful papers on the market, and I know that a lot of people like doing distress backgrounds, which I will be doing some videos on in the next little bit, but I really love using papers because they are so beautiful and they're so vibrant. So you can check me out on my website at Kellyscards.ca. You can subscribe for more videos, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.